My wedding ring had been on my finger for 42 years. I never imagined I would take it off willingly. My name is Margaret. I am 70 years old. I live in a small town where everyone knows each other. After my husband Thomas passed away, the ring became more than jewelry. It became a promise. It reminded me of every happy memory we had built together. Then one cold morning, my daughter called me. Her voice was shaking. "Mom," she whispered, "Ethan needs surgery." Ethan is my grandson. He is 10 years old. He loves reading books, building tiny airplanes, and making everyone laugh. Hearing that he was sick felt like someone had taken the air from my lungs. The doctors said the operation could save him, but the family needed money quickly. My daughter and her husband had already sold many things. They worked hard every day, yet it still was not enough. That night I could not sleep. I walked around my quiet house. Every room held a memory. Thomas smiling in the kitchen, Ethan playing on the living room floor, family dinners filled with laughter. My eyes stopped on the small wooden box beside my bed. Inside was my wedding ring. Thomas gave it to me on a rainy afternoon. We had almost nothing back then. He apologized because he could not afford a large diamond. I smiled and told him, "I don't need a big ring. I only need you." For decades, I never removed it except to wash it. Now I held it in my hand. It felt warm and it felt heavy. It felt like my entire life. The next morning, I walked into the old jewelry shop downtown. The owner looked at the ring carefully. "It has beautiful history," he said softly. I smiled. "It has a beautiful future, too," I answered. He asked if I was certain. I nodded. "My grandson needs another chance." He offered me a fair price. When the money touched my hands, tears filled my eyes. I was not crying because I had sold the ring. I was crying because I knew Thomas would have done exactly the same thing. We always believed that love was never measured by what we kept. Love was measured by what we were willing to give. The money helped pay for Ethan's surgery. Those were the longest hours of my life. Our family sat together in silence inside the hospital waiting room. Nobody looked at their phones. Nobody complained. We simply waited. Finally, the surgeon walked toward us. He smiled. "The operation was successful." I felt my knees become weak. My daughter hugged me tightly. Weeks later, Ethan came home. He slowly became stronger. One afternoon, he walked into my house carrying a tiny paper box. "I made something for you," he said. Inside was a simple silver-colored ring made from wire and polished by hand. "I know Grandpa's ring is gone," he whispered, "so I made you a new one." It was not expensive, it was not perfect, but it was priceless. I slipped it onto my finger. It fit perfectly. In that quiet moment, I felt Thomas beside me again, not because of gold, not because of diamonds, because love had returned in another form. Today, I still wear Ethan's little ring. People sometimes ask why an old woman wears such a simple piece of jewelry. I just smile. I tell them that some rings are bought with money. Others are built with gratitude, sacrifice, and hope. Looking at my hand now, I no longer miss my old wedding ring. It completed its journey the day it helped save my grandson. That was always its true purpose. My wedding ring left my finger, but love never left my heart. Ethan's recovery was slow, but every single day brought a small improvement. At first, he could only walk a few steps before becoming tired. A week later, he walked across the living room without stopping. Soon, his bright smile began to return. Watching him laugh again was worth more than anything I had ever owned. One Saturday afternoon, he visited my house carrying a small backpack. His face was full of excitement. "Grandma," he said, "I have a surprise for you." He carefully placed a tiny wooden box on the kitchen table. "It isn't expensive," he said shyly, "but I made it myself." My hands trembled as I opened the lid. Inside was a simple silver-colored ring made from a thin piece of wire. The surface had been polished until it reflected the sunlight coming through my window. It wasn't perfect. Tiny marks covered the metal, showing every hour of careful work. "I watched videos online," Ethan explained. I wanted to make you something because you gave up Grandpa's ring for me." I couldn't speak. Tears filled my eyes before I even realized they were there. I slipped the little ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. For a long moment, neither of us said a word. Then Ethan hugged me as tightly as his small arms could. "I'll never forget what you did," he whispered. Those simple words touched my heart more deeply than he could ever understand. That evening, I sat alone on my porch watching the sunset. The sky slowly changed from bright blue to soft orange and pink. Thomas always loved sunsets. He used to say they reminded him that every ending also carries the promise of a new beginning. For the first time since selling my wedding ring, I smiled without sadness. I realized I had never truly lost it. The gold was gone, but the love behind it remained stronger than ever. A few weeks later, Ethan returned to school. His classmates welcomed him with applause when he entered the classroom. His teacher later told me that he had become even kinder than before. He helped other children with their homework. He shared his lunch when someone forgot theirs. He smiled at everyone. Pain had changed him, not into someone weaker, into someone more compassionate. One afternoon, Ethan handed me a folded piece of paper. "I wrote something for school," he said. It was an essay titled "The Greatest Gift I Have Ever Received." I expected him to write about his birthday or Christmas. Instead, he wrote about family. He wrote about sacrifice. He wrote about love that asks for nothing in return. The final sentence stopped me completely. "My grandma didn't lose her wedding ring. She turned it into my future." I read that sentence again and again. Each time it became even more beautiful. At that moment, I understood something important. Objects carry memories, but people carry love, and love always survives. Years have passed since that difficult season of our lives. Ethan is no longer the little boy who needed help walking through a hospital hallway. Today, he is a confident young man with kind eyes and a generous heart. Every time I see him helping someone, I remember the promise hidden inside that tiny handmade ring. Life has a quiet way of returning the love we give away. One Sunday morning, Ethan asked me to meet him at the small park where Thomas used to take him when he was little. The trees had grown taller, the playground looked newer, but the old wooden bench was still there. "Grandma," he said, smiling, "sit with me." We watched children running across the grass. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. The silence felt peaceful. Then Ethan reached into his jacket pocket. "I've been saving money for a long time," he said. He handed me a small velvet box. My heart immediately began to race. I slowly opened it. Inside was a beautiful gold wedding ring, simple, elegant, almost identical to the one I had sold years before. I looked at Ethan with surprise. "You didn't have to do this," I whispered. He smiled gently. "I know. I didn't buy it because you needed another ring. I bought it because I wanted to thank the woman who gave me another chance to live." Tears rolled down my cheeks. I carefully held the ring in my hands, but I did not put it on. Instead, I smiled and closed the box. Ethan looked confused. "Don't you like it?" he asked. "I love it," I replied, "but I already have the ring I need." I raised my hand. The little silver wire ring he had made as a child was still on my finger. It had become slightly worn over the years. Tiny scratches covered its surface. But every mark reminded me of hope. Every scratch reminded me of family. Every scratch reminded me that real love is never measured by gold. "It may not look valuable," I told him, "but this little ring carries the greatest treasure of my life." Ethan quietly nodded. Then he slipped the new gold ring back into its box. "I understand," he said. "I finally know what Grandpa believed." I smiled. "And what was that?" He looked toward the sunset and answered softly. "Love is never something we own. It is something we pass on." Those words sounded exactly like Thomas. For a brief moment, it felt as though all 3 generations were sitting together on that old wooden bench, not separated by time, not separated by loss, united by love. When we stood to leave, Ethan wrapped his arm around my shoulders just as Thomas used to do. We walked home slowly. The evening breeze was cool. The sky glowed with shades of orange and gold. I realized something that day. The wedding ring I sold had never disappeared. It had simply changed its shape. First, it became a life-saving operation. Then it became a little handmade ring. Finally, it became a lesson our family would carry forever. People sometimes believe sacrifice means losing something precious. I have learned the opposite. True sacrifice transforms something precious into something priceless. Whenever someone notices the simple wire ring on my finger, they often ask why I never replace it. I simply smile, because no jewelry store can create what this little ring represents. It reminds me that kindness always leaves a legacy. It reminds me that family is stronger than fear. Most of all, it reminds me that love is not measured by what we keep. It is measured by what we are willing to give away. My wedding ring left my finger many years ago, but its story never ended. It lives inside my grandson. It lives inside our family. And every time I look at the little silver ring on my hand, I remember the day I thought I had lost everything. Instead, I found the greatest treasure of all. Love never left my heart.